Hi, I'm Carla with Kits by Carla. Today I'm going to show you how to make perfect 6-point stars, multiple units at the same time. We do this using the techniques explained in our shortcut sheets. The shortcut sheets basically shows you how to make multiple units using strips and cutting them without needing special
I've already
rulers.
cut my fabric strips according to the directions. I do all my cutting at the same time, and I put things in order of the row that I'll be making. Since I'm making row 1, I have my 2.5 inch by 14 of fabric B and 2 pieces of 3.5 by 14 of fabric A. And this is the unit that I'm going to be making right now. It looks like this. I pre-cut my angle on this side. To do that, I just use the line that's on my cutting mat for that, and I just line it up and trim it that way. I don't have to be too precise, it just gives me a starting point. Also, you want to make sure that you're in the same direction as the illustration. Doesn't matter which one you start with, but you want to make sure that the second part that we're going to sew is not going to be in the same. It has to be the opposite direction. So this is the one we're doing right now. I only use a regular ruler and a cutting mat and a rotary cutter. As long as I have a 60-degree line on this ruler and one on my cutting mat, I don't need anything else. So I'm going to sew these right sides together with a 1/4 inch seam. The 1/4 inch is roughly where that valley is, but again, we're going to trim off this side to square it up so we don't have to be too precise at this stage. I'll go sew these up right now. So something I just want to point out, when the 3 sections are sewn together, make sure you press your seams open and get in there with the toe of your iron. I use a mini iron because it's got a nice little point on it. Flip it around and make sure there's no little crease anywhere. I can actually feel my stitching along these lines. The next thing I want to do is square up, not actually square, it's at a 60-degree, the top side. And I just use my ruler. I've got a 60-degree line on it. I line that up with one of my seams. Bring it down enough to make a little trim. And just straighten out that angle. Now I know I have an accurate 60-degree on that side. I can cut from that my 2-inch strips. Under the ruler, line up my 2-inch mark with this cut seam that we just trimmed, and I'm going to cut 5 sections from here. What we're actually making is 10 6-point stars at the same time. And this is the 5th one. Now, I just mentioned we're making 10, and that's because we actually have to cut these apart to make 2 half units. Just corner to corner. And they're going to be the same. Sometimes you get this little piece here, just trim that off. And stack them up there. Now notice your diamond shape has a short side and has a long diagonal. You want the short diagonal. That's the one you're trimming. This is giving me a total of 10 half row 1 units. This is my final one. These techniques are used in many of my quilt patterns. If you were to buy a pattern that required 6-pointed stars, these instructions would be part of those. directions. Now we are making a 6.5 inch raw edge star for a final sewn-in seam of 6 inches. The second part of my row 1 assembly is what I'm showing you here. We have a long piece of fabric A that's 3.5 inches wide. From that, we're going to stitch on these units that we've just cut. So here's my long piece. First thing I do is I make my angle the way I show you there. Put it along my line. Here, cut my 60°. Again, this is just rough. We don't have to be too precise with this. I'm going to position it exactly the way the illustration has it, pointing in the same direction. Looking at my right side, I'm going to stitch these on. I'm going to place them about 1/2 inch apart as I take them to the machine, roughly 1/2 inch. And of course, right sides together, so I'm starting like this. And as I go, I'm going to keep adding more and more until all 10 of these are then sewn on to this one long piece. So let me go and do that right now. I don't even bother pinning. I just put them in position as I sew this entire line in one pass. Let's go and do that right now. So here's my strip with my pieces sewn. I've pressed my seams open and left about 1/2 inch between these units. Now I already know that this side of the strip is 2 inches. I already know that this is an angle. So all I need to do is line my ruler up and continue that 2 inch strip width. So now I've got 1/4 inch above my point for when I sew these together later. And I just go through and do all the tops first and then go back and sew the other side by flipping it around. We had 5 units. We cut them in half. That gave us 10. I've sewn all those 10 on at the same time. So I'm going to end up with 10 row 1s with this final cut. That is exactly 2 inches wide. And the 6.5 inches that I need to trim to make them final size, I'm not going to do that until later. I'm going to wait till I have all my rows together and then square them all up at the same time. So that's how I make unit 1. So now I've prepared my fabric for row number 2, and row number 2 has a triangle in the center, 2 diamonds, and then the outer edges. This triangle has to be the same fabric as this one because together they're going to form a point or a diamond, the way you see here. So my colors now for my second row, my B fabric is in my center again. On the outside of that, I've got 2 of my dark blues. And then finally I end that with my fabric A, my background fabric. So I cut the angle already, give me a rough 60°. I'm looking at my right side, so I'm going to be sewing these strips together, right sides together. I'll take these to the machine and do that now. We can see that this unit has been finished. Now the first thing we do, our first cut, is along the top edge. Here's the 60° line of my ruler. I'll bring it up close to the top. Make sure I catch a little of everything and that it's straight. Trim away. And now I'm going to cut this into, same as the other one, this is going to be 5 2-inch strips. Just lining up that 2-inch mark with my freshly cut line. I've got a nice sharp blade in my rotary cutter. Nothing worse than having to go over the line twice. And the last cut then is the short diagonal, not the long diagonal. So I'm cutting these 5 units apart to give me 10, exactly the way we did with row 1. Make 6. Just touching those 2 corners to corner. I don't have to check the angle, I know it's going to be right. I do tighten up my stitch a little bit at the machine because with all these cuts I don't want my seams to open up. So I've got a fast, so I put it to 2.0. Now the next section of row 2 is to first sew these 2 strips together, which I'm going to do. Cut the angle on them, press the seams open, and then all of these are going to be sewn on like this, using right sides together. Again, they're going to be about a 1/2 inch apart. And when that's all done, cut them apart on the 2-inch lines again. And then all of row 2 will be complete. You'll have 10 row 2s. So here you can see row 1. Here's our finished row 2. We're not ready to square the sides off yet. We're going to get ready to do row 3. And row 3 is going to have a darker triangle in the center. So that's my middle 2.5 inch by 14. On both sides of that, we've got 2 inches, and then the outside is 2 inches. So this is making our first half of our unit. Then we have 2 30-inch strips. We sew them together, and then we take our half units and sew them on the side to make our 3rd row. Now I'm cutting my row 3 units. The 5 pieces are together. I put my straight 60-degree on the top edge, and now I'm cutting 2-inch strips. Strips I will then cut apart. I like to use a small ruler, it's actually a little easier. Remember, it's the short diagonal, not the long diagonal. And you're getting 10 pieces exactly the same. Already sewn my 2 strips together for the next half. So I wanted to point something out in the diagram. This is the way it goes, with the angle opposite what we did originally. The pieces are going to come off the end. This is right sides together. But when I sew them, I really like to sew from this top edge. I don't like to go to the machine and sew this way and tuck them under as I go. It's a little hard to see, hard to fit. So what I do is I put my 60-degree on the other side as well, and I make sure that I'm doing a parallel. So I'm doing these 2 angles on my strip. I'm not accidentally cutting it this way. So make sure it goes on the right line. And that way I can start from this end and go over to the machine, and I know that I'm going to be right. I'm going to put the first one down like this. Sew from the top edge and just position them about a 1/2 inch apart as I go. So finally, we're making row number 4. Row number 4 is identical to row 1. It has 1 single color in the center, which is the color of the point. You can see that this is the row we're making. It has 2 wider background fabrics, and when these have been cut into the 10 half units, we're then going to sew it to this 3.5 inch strip of background fabric. Ready to come together. You can see the sides have not been squared up yet, so don't worry about that for now. I'm going to take these and go to the machine. I'm going to chain stitch them. So So I'll first do these two and then I'll do those two. I'm just going to finger pin because these V's line up. So when I go to the machine, right sides together of course, line up this V with that V. Hold it firmly, put it under the machine and sew. If I need to adjust, this is a diagonal. I can pull and stretch a little bit if I want to make sure this is dead center on. It should be very, very close. And that's why we don't quilt with wood. So now I've sewn rows 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 together. Seams again are pressed open. And I think you can see that they're pretty exact. Can't really criticize the precision in this method. So the next step then, of course, is to sew these halves together. Right sides together, again, finger pin. And if you need to ease one side into the other, that's fine. You can just give it a little pull as you're stitching it. And that'll give you perfect points. And the next step then will be to square it up, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So I'm ready to trim these stars down. As you can see, I have 10 of them. They are already the right height, 6.5 inches. You can see I have my 1/4 inch seam allowance above the point. What I need now is from the center, make sure I've got 3 1/4 inch on both sides. And again, I'm using my quilting ruler. This is 6.5 inches wide. So at the 3 1/4 mark, I have a white line, and that goes through my points and through my center. Now when I trim my 2 sides, I know I'm going to have, just square that up a little, I know I'm going to have a 6.5 inch square. And there it is there. Now this took me about 2 hours to make these 10 stars. I'm going to make another 10 now using reds for my pattern. Part of that 2 hours was the videotaping, a few retakes, but then again I've done this a few times. So I think if you allow 3 hours to make 10, you should be pretty happy that this is a nice, fast, precise way to get your 6-point stars. So to recap, make sure you cut your strips exactly the width that the pattern tells you. Make sure you cut your 60 degrees. Then precise 2-inch dimensions. Make sure you have a 1/4 inch seam on your machine, and make sure you press very, very flat so that you don't have any movement at all and you've got nice straight lines. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you will enjoy trying this. Check back often. We have other shortcut sheets